What happens when a CEO pretends to be a carpet cleaner only to uncover something that could destroy everything he built? Mason Carter stood in the back of his black SUV, pulling a worn polo shirt over his head. "You sure this looks right?" he asked his assistant, holding up a spray bottle and a mop bucket. "You look like you've been cleaning floors for 20 years, she said, adjusting the fake name tag on his shirt. Ray. Mason had bought the cleaning franchise 8 years ago from a retiring veteran. Since then, he'd turned it into a chain of 18 locations across the state. Business was steady, but lately, something didn't feel right. Bookings at the Northside branch had dipped without explanation. A longtime customer emailed him directly saying she was charged for services that were never delivered. He pressed the district manager, but the answers were vague. Could just be a staff shortage, they said. Nothing major. Mason didn't like vague. He'd never met most of the frontline workers. With 18 locations, it wasn't feasible. He ran the corporate side and left day to day to the managers. That made it simple to go in undercover. With his gray beard grown out, thick glasses, and a slight hunch added to his walk, Mason looked nothing like the man who sat in boardrooms. He arrived at the Northside location at 5:45 a.m. sharp. The storefront was plain glass windows, a faded logo, and a handwritten "Help Wanted" sign taped to the door. Inside, a woman in her early 20s stood behind the front desk, flipping through a clipboard. You Ray?" she asked. "Yeah. Carpet cleaner. Starting today." She barely looked up. "Cool. I'm Bailey." "You're with me." Bailey was sharp, fast-talking, and carried the weight of someone who'd been doing the work of 3 people. She grabbed a work shirt from the back and tossed it to him. "We're short again," she muttered. Carlos called out. "Again. And Mike, don't even get me started." "Who's Mike?" Mason asked as he pulled on the shirt. She rolled her eyes. "Manager. If he shows up before noon, it's a miracle." Their first job was a large office building downtown. Bailey drove the van. On the way, she explained how they'd lost 2 full-timers in the last month. "Pays crap and we're always short on supplies. Last week I bought degreaser with my own money," she said, shaking her head. "They say we're broke. But somehow Mike just bought a new truck." Mason stayed quiet, taking mental notes. They arrived at the building and Bailey showed him how to prep the equipment. She was patient, even when he fumbled with the hose. "You're not bad," she said. "Most new guys can't even figure out the sprayer." They cleaned for 6 hours straight. Bailey worked nonstop, no breaks, no complaints. As they packed up, Mason noticed something odd. The invoice left behind was marked prepaid cash, but Bailey hadn't collected anything. "Someone already paid?" he asked. She frowned. "No, we never get cash jobs here." Back at the office, they returned the van and logged their time. Mike still hadn't shown up. "Typical," Bailey said. "He'll probably roll in around 4. Act like he's been busy all day." Mason waited around, pretending to mop the back hallway. At 3:57 p.m., a lifted black truck pulled into the lot. A man in his late 30s hopped out, phone in one hand, sunglasses on his head. He walked in like he owned the place. "That's Mike," Bailey said under her breath. Mike barely acknowledged them. He disappeared into the back office without a word. Mason glanced at Bailey. "Does he always just vanish like that?" She nodded. "Unless the district manager's coming. Then he's suddenly the hardest worker in the state." Mason knew he had to see more, so he signed up for another shift the next day. That night, he called the corporate accountant. "Pull the last 6 months of Northside's cash invoices," Mason said. "Compare them to our actual bank deposits." Something's off. Mason was back in the Northside office the next morning before sunrise. Bailey arrived 10 minutes later, carrying the same duffel bag from the day before and a large thermal cup in one hand. "You're early," she said, unlocking the front door. "Couldn't sleep," Mason replied. "Figured I'd learn faster if I watched how everything gets set up." She gave a tired nod and flicked on the lights. "You'll get your chance." We've got 4 jobs today, and 2 of them are back-to-backs. Mason followed her inside. The hallway smelled faintly of mildew and cheap disinfectant. In the back utility room, a stack of stained microfiber towels sat unwashed in an open bin. Bailey pulled up the route sheet from a clipboard by the supply shelf. "No Carlos again," she muttered. "That makes 4 days this week." Mason glanced at the paperwork. "So it's just us again?" She didn't answer, just started filling a bucket with solution. By 8, they were halfway through their first job, a small child care center in the suburbs. Bailey worked fast, but not carelessly. She moved furniture with precision, made sure nothing blocked fire exits, and double-checked corners most people would miss. Mason was slower, but she adjusted without complaint. When they finished, the owner signed the work order and handed Bailey a sealed envelope. "Cash job," she said. "Mike asked me to give it to him directly." Bailey looked at the envelope, then back at the woman. "He told you to pay in cash?" "Yep. Said it would save me the card fee." Bailey forced a polite smile and tucked it into the van's glove box. As she backed out of the lot, her jaw shifted tight. "Did we start offering discounts for paying in cash?" Mason asked. "Not officially," she said. They rode in silence until the next stop. It was a 2-story house in a gated community. The customer, a man in his 40s with a Bluetooth earpiece, pointed out the rooms and left them to it. Half an hour in, Mason accidentally knocked over a small lamp while moving a footstool. "You all right?" Bailey asked, unplugging a hose. "Yeah. Lamp's cheap though. Probably from a clearance rack." Bailey stopped what she was doing and looked at him. "Don't say that in front of a client," she said. "Even if it's true, people tie their worth to stuff like that." Mason nodded. "Right." They finished the job without further incident and drove back to the office to restock before the afternoon shift. As they pulled in, Mason spotted Mike's truck already in the lot. Inside, the office door was half closed, and voices came from within. Bailey paused just outside the hallway. "I told you not to log that one," Mike said. "It's a cash client. I handle those." A second voice, probably another employee, responded. "I thought we had to list all jobs." Mike's voice hardened. "Let me say it again slower. You don't log cash jobs unless I tell you to. You want hours next week or not?" Bailey motioned for Mason to keep moving. They headed to the back where the van keys were stored. "You hear that?" she asked in a low voice. Mason nodded. "That's why I'm looking for another job. I don't care if I have to wait tables again. At least there, stealing's obvious." Mason didn't respond. He felt a weight in his chest. He had heard enough to confirm what he suspected, but he needed to see how deep it ran. They finished the last 2 jobs of the day, both routine residential cleanings. One customer complained about a missed appointment from last week. Bailey apologized, promised to reschedule, and took the heat without passing blame. The woman still seemed irritated. Back at the office just before 5, Mike was in the reception area talking to a man in a maintenance uniform. Mason caught the tail end of their conversation. "Yeah, just say you replaced it. I'll invoice the main office. They don't check these line items." The maintenance guy nodded and walked out, leaving a clipboard behind. Mike turned and saw Mason standing by the mop sink. "You're the new guy, right? Ray?" Mason kept his head slightly down. "Yeah. You're not bad. Quiet. That's good. You'll go far if you stay out of crap that doesn't concern you." Bailey walked in behind him, setting down her gear. Mike didn't acknowledge her. She stared at him for a moment. "You get that envelope from the daycare job?" He turned toward her. "What envelope?" "You told them to give it to you directly." Mike's eyes narrowed. "You sure you didn't just forget to collect it?" Mason stepped forward. "I saw her get it. She handed it to me for safekeeping." Mike's mouth twitched. He held out his hand. "Then give it to me." Bailey didn't move. "I've got it in the van," she said quietly. "I'll bring it in." Mason watched her walk out, then turned to Mike. "Do we usually handle cash off the books?" Mike tilted his head. "You asking a lot of questions for someone who's been here 2 days. I'm just trying to learn how things work here." Mike stepped closer. Then here's a lesson. Ask less. Clean more. Mason met his gaze. Got it. Later that evening, Mason sat in his car 2 blocks from the office, going through the accounting reports the corporate team had sent him. The numbers confirmed what he suspected. Dozens of cash jobs logged by clients, but not a single matching deposit in the Northside branch's bank records. He cross-referenced the names with the appointment logs. Nearly all the flagged jobs were assigned to teams Mike had personally scheduled. He made a call. Put a freeze on all discretionary spending for Northside. And I want a full audit on every cash job in the last 6 months. The voice on the other end hesitated. You want us to notify the district lead? No, not yet. He reports to Mike. Keep this tight. The next morning, Bailey wasn't at the office. A younger male cleaner named Trey was waiting instead, looking half asleep. You seen Bailey? Mason asked. Trey shrugged. She called out. Said she was sick. Mason reached for his phone, then stopped. Something didn't feel right. He walked to the break room and checked the schedule pinned to the corkboard. Bailey was listed for a full shift. Mike walked in a moment later, holding a smoothie and chatting on Bluetooth. Bailey not here? Mason asked. Mike didn't remove the headset. She's not with us anymore. Quit this morning. Mason stared at him. Just like that. She wasn't a good fit. Complained too much. We need team players, not drama. Mason turned away before he said something he couldn't take back. He walked outside and sat in the van, dialing Bailey's number. She answered on the second ring. Hey, it's Ray, he said. You all right? There was a pause. I'm fine. Just done. I told Mike I was reporting the cash thing. He told me to take the week off and think about my future. So I quit. I'm sorry. You don't need to be. He's been getting away with it for too long. Someone needs to do something. Mason hung up and stared at the windshield. The sun was just breaking through the clouds, casting pale light over the parking lot. He'd seen enough. That afternoon, he returned to the Northside office unannounced. This time, in a tailored suit. Mike was in the hallway when he saw him. Can I help you? He asked, puzzled. Mason took off his glasses and straightened up. Yeah, he said. You can explain where the missing $62,000 in cash invoices went. Mike's face drained of color. Who are you? Mason Carter, he said. I own this company. The silence was total. Then Mason said office. Now. Mike looked around as if searching for a way to disappear. But there was none. Mason followed him in and closed the door behind them. Mike stood by the office window, arms crossed, trying to piece together a response. Mason sat across from him, calm but unreadable, a man who had already made his decision. You've got this all wrong, Mike said finally. I don't know where you're getting your info, but from your clients, Mason interrupted. From the audit team. From your own logs. I've spent the last 3 days cleaning carpets with one of the most overworked employees I've ever met, watching you skim cash from jobs and threaten anyone who questions it. Mike's jaw tensed. Look, maybe there's been some miscommunication, but there's no miscommunication, Mike. There's a pattern. You've been pocketing cash, underreporting jobs, and intimidating staff to keep quiet. You took advantage of a branch that's understaffed and expected no one would look twice. Mike shifted his weight, eyes darting to the door. You didn't come here to clean carpets. You came to set me up. I came here because the numbers didn't make sense. You gave me every reason to dig deeper. Mike took a step forward. I've been here for 5 years. I built this location. You think it runs without me? Mason stood slowly. It's not running. It's bleeding. Bailey carried 3 shifts this week alone. Supplies are missing. Clients are complaining. And you were nowhere to be found until you needed to cover your tracks. Mike opened his mouth, but Mason raised a hand. You're done here. Effective immediately. HR will contact you for an exit interview. Security will walk you out. Mike scoffed. You think you'll find someone to do this job better? I already have, Mason said, brushing past him. Outside the office, the 2 reception clerks froze when they saw Mike trail behind Mason, pale and silent. Mason turned to one of them. Can you make a call to corporate security? Let them know Mike's termination is active and he'll need escorting out of the building. The clerk gave a slow, stunned nod. Mike didn't say a word as he left the building. The door clicked shut behind him. Mason walked to the back office and pulled the employee files from the cabinet. Bailey's folder was near the top. He flipped it open, scanning the performance reviews. All solid. No disciplinary actions. No warnings. He dialed her number. She answered after a few rings, voice guarded. "It's Mason," he said. "Not Ray." Silence. "I need to apologize," he continued. "You were right. About everything." She exhaled just once. "So what now?" "I want you back. But not to clean carpets. I need someone to run the Northside branch. Someone I can trust." There was a pause. "You're serious? Come in tomorrow. Let's talk about what you need to make this place work again." "I'll think about it." She hung up. Mason stayed late that evening, reviewing schedules, invoices, and supply orders. He flagged every cash job listed over the last 6 months, drew up a plan to contact each client for verification, and compiled a list of vendors Mike had dealt with directly. By the time he left, the sun had dipped below the skyline and the parking lot was empty. The next morning, Bailey showed up 15 minutes early. She wore her old work shirt, but her eyes were sharper than Mason had seen before. "You sure about this?" she asked as they stepped into the office. "I don't offer jobs out of guilt," he said. "I offer them when someone's earned it." He handed her a new badge with her name and branch manager beneath it. "What's the catch?" she asked cautiously. "You'll need to rebuild this team. Honest hires, no shortcuts. I'll give you the authority to interview and onboard, but don't take on more than the team can carry." "I want to adjust the route system," she said. "We're wasting too much time backtracking across the city." "Do it. And we need a lock on the supply room. Inventory's been walking off for months. Consider it done." She looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're not just going to disappear again, right? I'll be here more often. And when I'm not, you'll have direct access to me. No more walls." They got to work immediately. Bailey pulled the schedules and began calling the remaining crew, checking who was still willing to stay. Half had already applied elsewhere. One had taken a warehouse job the day before. "I'll need at least 2 new hires this week," she said. "Trey's decent, but he's green. We'll bring in floaters from the Southside and Ridgeview branches temporarily," Mason said. "That'll give you breathing room." She nodded. "One more thing. I want to do a meeting with every client we lost in the last 3 months. I want to hear why." Mason raised an eyebrow. "You want to call them yourself?" "Yeah. If this place is going to earn trust again, it starts with owning what went wrong." He gave her a slow nod. "You've got the lead." By the afternoon, the office already felt different. The front desk was organized, the phones answered on the first ring, and Bailey had set up a whiteboard outlining weekly goals. Mason watched quietly as she coached Trey through a revised van loading process, showing him how to balance the chemical bins to reduce spillage on turns. Trey followed her lead closely, asking questions. "So if I run low on pre-treat, do I log it here?" "Exactly. And let me know before you head out. I'll cross-check against inventory." Mason stepped into the back hallway and called the accountant. "Any pushback on the freeze?" "None. But you should know 2 other branches have similar irregularities. Smaller scale, but worth looking into. Start pulling records. Quietly. I'll handle the rest." He hung up and returned to the front. Bailey was finishing a call. "That was the daycare," she said. "They were surprised I called. Said they'd stopped using us because someone tried to charge them twice for a no-show." Mason nodded once. "Tell them we'll comp their next 2 cleanings. And that I'll personally follow up." She gave him a look. "You're not just saying that for show?" "No. I'm saying that because it's the least we can do." The day ended with Bailey reviewing resumes for potential new hires. Mason sat nearby, typing notes for a company-wide memo, one that would outline a new policy. All cash jobs would now require dual verification and same-day deposits logged centrally with photo-confirmed receipts. No exceptions. As he typed, he paused, looking over at Bailey. She was circling a name on one of the applications, lips moving slightly as she rehearsed interview questions. This wasn't just about cleaning carpets. It never had been. It was about the people who kept the wheels turning. And he'd nearly lost them. He closed his laptop and stood. "I'll be back in 2 days. You've got everything you need." Bailey didn't look up. I need a better coffee machine. He smiled. Done. Mason walked out into the fading light, the hum of the city in his ears. He'd come looking for answers. He found something better, a second chance to lead the right way. 3 weeks after the reveal, the Northside branch was still running lean. Bailey had filled one of the 2 open positions, bringing on a quiet but precise technician named Jamal, who had transferred from the Ridgeview location. It wasn't enough to balance the full workload, but it was a start. Mason hadn't promised miracles, and Bailey didn't expect them. What mattered was that promises made were followed by action. The new security protocols Mason implemented had already flagged 2 additional discrepancies at other branches. Those were being handled separately, but the message across the company was clear. There was no corner of the business exempt from scrutiny anymore. That Monday, Mason returned to Northside unannounced, no disguise, no camera crew, just a clipboard and a quiet presence. He stepped inside just as a client was leaving, shaking Jamal's hand with a satisfied nod. The front desk was more organized, the shelves behind it now labeled and stocked with just the essentials. Bailey was at the center of it all, reviewing route plans with Trey, who was still learning but had gained confidence. "Morning," Mason said, stepping forward. Bailey looked up, surprised but composed. "Didn't expect you today. I'm rotating through all locations every 2 weeks. Just checking in. Then you picked a rough one. We're triple booked. Ridgeview couldn't loan us a second van this week." Mason nodded. "I saw. I've got a call scheduled with the fleet manager to reassign an underutilized unit from Southside. You'll have it by Thursday." Bailey folded her arms. "And the extra hire? Still in background checks. 2 more days, tops." She looked toward the hallway. "We've had to push a few clients to weekend slots. They weren't thrilled." "Understandable," Mason said. "I'll make a few goodwill calls personally. Offer a free upholstery add-on to anyone who got rescheduled." Bailey gave a short, approving nod, but her attention shifted to something behind Mason. "Hang on." She walked over to the side entrance where a delivery driver had just wheeled in 2 boxes. She signed the slip, opened one, and frowned. "These are the wrong pads. These are for tile, not carpet." Mason stepped closer. "Who placed the order?" "System says it was auto-filled from a template. Mike must have set it up months ago. I'll have corporate reset all recurring orders. You'll approve each one manually going forward." Bailey didn't say anything right away. Then, "You're not just patching this. You're rebuilding it." "I didn't come here to fix optics," Mason said. "I came to fix the business." Later that day, Bailey gathered the small team in the break room for a short meeting before the afternoon shift. It was cramped, and the overhead light flickered faintly, but no one seemed to mind. Jamal leaned against the wall, arms folded. Trey sat on a stool, tapping his pen nervously. "We're stretched," Bailey began. "And I know everyone's been doing 2 people's work, but I wanted to say this before we head out again. I notice it. I see the effort, and it's not going unseen." Trey looked up. "Are we still covering that double in Greenville on Friday?" "We are," Bailey said. "But I'll be going with you. No one's soloing long drives anymore." Mason, standing beside the coffee station, added, "And mileage reimbursements are going up. Starting today. You'll see it on your next check." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Mason said. "We're not going to be the company that burns people out and pretends it's normal." Bailey turned to him. "You want to tell them the rest?" Mason nodded. "Starting next quarter, we're implementing a field staff bonus based on client satisfaction and attendance. It'll be measured branch by branch. If Northside keeps trending the way it has, you'll be the first to receive it." Trey looked stunned. "Wait, like a real bonus?" "Real enough to make a difference," Mason said. "You'll earn it." The shift started shortly after. Bailey and Jamal took the van out to a commercial office job while Trey rode with Mason to a residential client who'd requested a follow-up after a botched cleaning under Mike's management. The woman, a retired nurse, opened the door cautiously at first, then broke into a smile when Mason introduced himself as company leadership. "Didn't expect the owner," she said, motioning them inside. "Didn't expect to be here myself," Mason admitted. "But figured I owed you that." They spent the next hour re-cleaning the carpets in 2 bedrooms and a hallway. Trey worked methodically, and Mason noticed how much quicker he was compared to just 2 weeks earlier. No shortcuts, no missed spots. Afterward, the woman thanked them and handed Trey a small tin of cookies. "Don't tell corporate," she joked. Mason smiled. "I think we can overlook that." Back at the office, Bailey had returned ahead of them, reviewing a stack of new client forms. She looked up as Mason walked in. "That office job," she said. "They want to move to a bi-weekly schedule." Said Jamal's edge work was cleaner than anyone they've had. "Good," Mason said. "Let's lock it in." As the day wound down, Mason stepped outside to make a final call. He reached the district manager who had originally vouched for Mike. "You're going to need to re-interview every team lead under your supervision," Mason said. "Effective immediately." "Understood," the man replied, voice tight. "And from now on, you'll be required to spend at least 1 full day a week at each site you oversee. No more remote managing." "I'll make it work." Mason ended the call and returned inside, where Bailey was finishing the last item on her to-do list. "You're leaving?" she asked. "For now," Mason said. "But I'll be back next Wednesday." "Southside's getting a surprise visit first." She stood with her arms crossed. "You think you'll have to fire someone else?" "Maybe. But I'd rather promote someone." That night, as Mason drove away from the Northside location, he passed Mike's old truck parked outside a used car lot. The dealership lights shone on its dusty hood, a for sale sticker barely holding to the windshield. Mason didn't look twice. The company wasn't perfect. It still had work to do. But it was moving forward with its eyes open, its people heard, and its standards higher than they had ever been. And this time, no one would be cleaning up someone else's mess in silence.